You can hit me with this one.
Gotcha.
I'll be the one to say it. After what Dan Campbell did this year, first division, first playoff win, a chance to go to the NFC Championship game, first time ever in over 32 years. What Brad Holmes has done in Detroit, building this team, having 5, 6, 7 players that are all top 5 in their position group in the full NFL, multiple all-pro players, a rookie that's an all-pro player. I'll be the one to say it, fellas. Give Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell a lifetime contract here in Detroit. I want grit to be in Detroit forever. They just did something that no Lions coach and GM could do in the last 30 years, and they've built a foundation that we have never seen here in Detroit. They have completely changed it. There might be bumps in this road, but guess what? They just proved to us that they did something that no one else in Detroit could do, and they could take us to the promised land and get us to where we need to be and get us over that hump. And they did it by building a culture from the ground up, and they built the foundation. Give those guys, I don't think you can do lifetime contracts in the NFL, you probably can't. Go re-sign them for a 10-year deal. Give them a 10-year deal. I don't care. Keep these guys in Detroit. And that's where I'm going with this, the whole grit thing. We have a video here of a national reporter, I'm guessing, asking Dan Campbell today, hey, was it hard to convince people in the building, to convince players that come in? Was it hard to convince them that this grit thing is real? I don't know if you guys remember the very first press conference that Dan Campbell came in, but when a coach is talking about grit and all of that, and he looks you dead in your eyes, and they say, hey, what's your identity? And he looks you right in your eyes, every single one of you in that room, and says, when we get knocked down, we're getting right back up, and on our way up, we're biting a kneecap, and if we get knocked down again, we're coming up, we're eating your other kneecap, and get knocked down again, and we're going to keep eating your kneecap, and we're going to be the last one standing. That's not fake. That man is completely, this is different. This is completely different. So for people to ask him, hey, did you have to convince me? That should have told you right there. Mm-hmm. Here's the question here. I don't know if it's questioning the legitimacy of the grit thing, but you guys can kind of just get a feel for it yourself here.
Thing that you've adopted and you're wearing on your hat. When you made your infamous bite your kneecaps thing when you were introduced, you got a lot of national play and laughs for that. But seriously, it's something you've tried to institute here, and I'm wondering if that was a tough sell at first.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I don't. No, because if it was, I didn't notice it, and I wasn't going to listen to it anyway. It's what we were doing here, and the players that are here are for that reason. The players that have been able to stick, it's what we're about, and it's what we'll always be about, above everything else. If you don't have that, and you don't have intestinal fortitude or mental toughness, resiliency about you, then you're not going to be able to play here. That's the bottom line. So. But no, our guys believe that. You know, the coaches believe it. The whole organization believes it's the bedrock of what we're about.
I'm gonna make you bedrock.
Dude,
Okay.
He dunked on the guy.
Yeah.
He dunked on
And
him.
he said it so calmly.
Yeah.
So direct. Like, no, like this is who we are. This is why. Without saying it, he said this is why we traded that number 6 pick, and we went and got the guy we wanted, because who was left at that moment? They didn't have the grit that they wanted.
You know what, too? I was thinking about this as well. A lot of teams and organizations, when they build up, what's the one thing that they do when they like to draft? Best player available, best need. They want to go out there and go get their the dude that's you're supposed to take, and that's what it's like that in every sport. As a GM, as a front office, it's like you're always that's just like what it is. It's like, oh, you want that shiny gold watch, you want the diamond. They've been so different from that, and it's proven last year. Like what Dan just said, we want to go in and get the guys that are about the grit. We don't care if we pass on some dudes. They passed on Jalen Carter. They passed on Bijan Robinson.
Mm-hmm. They passed on Michael Mayer.
They passed
for
on
reasons.
All of those tight ends. They passed on Micah Parsons. They passed on dudes because they said, hey, we're about something. And you don't see this ever in organizations. They're about something, and they're going to be about that. And they're they're not going to switch up from that. They're not going to change nothing. They're going to stick to those guns. They literally passed on Bijan Robinson, the guy that everyone said was a generational type player, that he was the next Saquon Barkley, the next Derrick Henry. He was that next dude that every team needs. And they said, you know what? We'll pass on him. We'll go get Jahmyr Gibbs, the guy that no one else is talking about. And then in the tight ends, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, all these guys are getting talked about. Then they said, you know what? We don't care about those top 3 or 4 guys. We're going to get the number 4 and number 5th ranked tight end in Sam Laporta because we know what he can be. Like, they just Jack Campbell. He was supposed to be later in the first round. They said, you know what? No, at 18, we're going to get Jack Campbell. And they just kept doing that, and they did that every single year. People wanted Micah Parsons. They said, no, we're going Penei Sewell. And that's the thing about it, dude, is that they bring in guys that have that grit.
Yeah, and you know what? The coach that people were most down on earlier in the season, Aaron Glenn, he's a coach who has grit. Like it might be harder to come out when you're calling plays or schemes, but by the time the end of the season happened, this whole team, the whole defense was bought into him, and players started to get healthy. He made the adjustments. I know he doesn't like that word, but he made the adjustments, and the defense is playing much better to the point where they were the difference in a playoff game, in the first playoff win. As incredible as that offense was in the first half, and as credible we talk about Jared Goff in that game and David Montgomery, St. Brown, that defense has changed the game. They won the game. Holding the Rams to 3 field goals, 0 for 3 in the red zone. This is a team that was one of the worst in the red zone at the beginning of the season. And that's where the grit comes out the most. All right, we're on the goal line. It's grit on grit. Who wins? And the Lions won 3 times.
Yeah.
3 times.
And
3 times.
You've seen, like, you know what the biggest example of all this is as well? The trade deadline. When
that's a gritty move to not move.
And when people, that was almost where the Booner path kind of really started to blossom, was because everyone was going against Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, saying, like, what are you guys doing? You guys, like, we were expecting to go get these guys, and Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and Chicago went and made a move. 49ers made a move. Every big team, the Eagles made a move. Like, everyone made a move. You realize, too, like, the Eagles made a move. How'd that help them? You don't always need to make a move. It doesn't always make you better or make you worse.
It may have made them better this season, possibly.
But look where
they're
one win away from the NFC Championship game, to where when that was happening, there was a lot of people that were like, and that was why I always go at Spencer as a joke for it, where it was like a lot of people were like, season's over. We're not competing this year. We're not contending. Now look what people are talking about on shows. People are coming up here saying they're going to the NFC Championship game and the Booner Path is alive. And I was getting clowned that week because I was saying that. And another thing on top of that, do you remember the term that everyone was joking around about and making fun of when during that week?
What?
The vibes.
The vibes, yeah. Booner,
oh, but what about
positive.
The vibes,
You're so
man?
optimistic. You're such a slappy.
We didn't make a move because of the vibes, man. Don't want to mess the vibes up. How are those vibes doing now, boys? Huh? How's the grit doing now, boys?
Talk to him, bro.
How's the Booner Path doing now, fellas?
Talk to him.
Come on, the vibes. How are the vibes now? Have a chance that you're a 6-point favorite to go to the NFC Championship game and are going to be one game, potentially, when you win Sunday, to go into a Super Bowl. And that is because of the vibes. And I said that week when everyone was making fun of the vibes. I sat up here and what do people say now? Stand on business, is it?
Stand on business. Yes.
Business. I stood on that. And I sat up here and I told the people the Booner Path is going to be just fine. There is a way for the Lions no matter which. Yeah, and people were like, oh, well, there's always a way. There is. But there was 90% of the people that I knew that were off of the path and said, no, there's no way. We just hope we can get a playoff win now. We're just hoping we can still win the division. Guess what? They're 2 games away from going to the Super Bowl, 3 games away from winning the Lombardi Trophy. And they're favored by 6 points at home with that because the vibes are good.
And still set up for good vibes next year.
And the year after.
The best possible vibes because they didn't throw that money away to make a short run at something. Brad Holmes' job is, yes, to win a Super Bowl, but also to build a sustainable franchise. And that's what we're getting. That's what we need to be excited about.